The air in the church was thick, heavy with the scent of 1,000 white lilies and suffocating hypocrisy. From my hiding spot in the dusty choir loft, I watched the scene unfold below. A sea of pastel suits and silk dresses, faces beaming with manufactured joy. They were all here for the society wedding of the year. My sister Lena's wedding. The wedding I was explicitly, coldly forbidden to attend. It's for the best, Ilara. Lena's voice had been a blade wrapped in velvet over the phone 2 weeks ago. He's private, and you can be a bit much. We just want a simple, quiet day. A quiet day. The words echoed in my head, a bitter laugh caught in my throat. Below me, a string quartet was playing and champagne was already being passed on silver trays. Quiet. Right. Every instinct in my body had screamed that something was wrong. For 6 months, this mystery fiancé had been a ghost, a name without a face. Every attempt I made to meet him was deflected with a series of increasingly flimsy excuses. He was on a business trip. He was feeling unwell. He was terribly shy. My parents played along, their faces smooth, unreadable masks. Give your sister her moment, dear, my mother had chided. Don't make this about you. But it felt like it was about me. The secrecy was a wall built specifically to keep me out. So here I was, a ghost at the feast, dressed in a plain black dress, my hair hidden under a scarf. I felt like a criminal, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I just needed to see him. I needed to look into the eyes of the man who had made my own family treat me like a stranger. I needed to understand why I was the one secret they couldn't bear to have exposed. The organ music swelled, a triumphant, deafening sound. The heavy oak doors at the back of the church swung open. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. And there she was, Lena. A vision in white lace, her smile as bright and sharp as a shard of glass. She looked radiant, triumphant. Her eyes scanned the crowd, a queen surveying her court. On her arm, his back still to me, stood her groom. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. My breath hitched. I leaned forward, my knuckles white as I gripped the wooden railing of the loft. The dust motes danced in the shafts of stained glass light. Just turn around, I pleaded silently. Let me see you. As if he'd heard my thought, he shifted. He turned his head slightly to whisper something in Lena's ear. The sunlight from the window caught the sharp line of his jaw, the familiar curve of his ear, the dark hair I had run my fingers through just this morning before he'd left for his urgent business conference in another state. The world didn't just stop. Shattered. It imploded into a silent, screaming vortex of absolute horror. The air was sucked from my lungs. The scent of lilies became the stench of decay. The beautiful music turned into a funeral dirge ringing in my ears. My heart didn't just stop. It was ripped from my chest, thrown to the marble floor and stomped into a bloody pulp. Because the man standing at the altar, beaming at my sister, the man about to marry her, was my husband. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. Let me take you back. Let me tell you how I got here, crouched in the shadows like a wounded animal, watching my entire existence burn to ash. 3 years ago I met Julian Thorne at a hospital fundraiser. I was a pediatric nurse working double shifts, exhausted but determined to make something of myself despite coming from a family that had always made me feel less than. He was a financial consultant, charming and attentive in a way that made me feel seen for the first time in my life. My family had always favored Lena. She was the golden child. Beautiful, poised, everything effortlessly perfect. She got the best schools, the best opportunities, the lion's share of our parents' attention and what little family money existed. I was the afterthought, the daughter who had to fight for scraps of affection. When I brought Julian home for the first time, I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes. Approval. Real, genuine approval. For once I had done something right. I had found someone worthy. He's wonderful, darling, she'd said, squeezing my hand. My father had clapped Julian on the shoulder, welcomed him like a son. Even Lena had smiled, though I'd caught something strange in her expression when she looked at him. Something hungry. I ignored it. I was so desperate for their acceptance, so hungry for a family that felt whole, that I ignored every single red flag. Julian and I married quietly 6 months later. It wasn't the grand affair I'd dreamed of as a girl, But he'd convinced me that intimate was better. Just us, he'd whispered against my hair. I don't need anyone else. You're all I want. Those words had felt like salvation then. Now they tasted like poison. We'd been married for 2.5 years. 2.5 years of what I thought was happiness. We lived in a modest apartment across town. Julian traveled frequently for work, or so he said. I worked long shifts at the children's hospital, pouring my heart into sick kids who needed someone to care, coming home exhausted to an often empty apartment. But when he was there it was good. Wasn't it? He'd bring me flowers. We'd cook dinner together. We'd make love in the dim light of our bedroom, his hands familiar on my skin, his breath warm against my neck. He told me he loved me. He called me his everything. How many of those nights had he come from her bed to mine? The thought made bile rise in my throat. I gripped the railing harder, my whole body trembling as I watched them process down the aisle below. My family had started acting strange about 6 months ago. The invitations to Sunday dinners dried up. My mother's calls became clipped, perfunctory. When I'd asked about Lena's engagement, which I'd only learned about through a cousin's social media post, my mother had been evasive. It's very new, dear. Very private. You know how Lena is about these things. But I didn't know. Lena had always been a peacock, preening and displaying every achievement, every acquisition. Privacy wasn't her style. Secrecy was something else entirely. I tried to call Lena directly. She'd sent my calls to voicemail for 2 weeks before finally answering. Elara, she'd said, her voice cool. What can I do for you? Not, how are you, not, I miss you. Just that clinical politeness, like I was a telemarketer. I heard you got engaged, I'd said, trying to keep my voice light. Congratulations. I'd love to meet him. We could do dinner, the 4 of us. The pause had been long enough to count my racing heartbeats. That's sweet, but we're really busy with wedding planning. And anyway, Julian, she'd said, his name, my husband's name, though I didn't know it then, isn't really comfortable with big family things yet. He's private. I'm not big family, Lena. I'm your sister. Exactly. Another pause. Look, you can be a bit intense sometimes. Overwhelming. I don't want to scare him off. Let's wait until after the wedding, okay? Then we can all get together. Every word had been a tiny needle precisely placed. I'd felt hurt, but also that familiar shame. That old voice that whispered I was too much, too needy, too wrong. Okay, I'd whispered. If that's what you want. It is. I'll send you an invitation to the wedding, of course. But she never did. 2 weeks ago, when I'd called to ask about it, she dropped the bomb. Actually, Elara, I think it's better if you sit this one out. The venue is small and we're keeping it intimate. Family only. I am family. You know what I mean. Her voice had gone hard. Immediate family. Parents and grandparents. That's it. It was such an obvious lie. I'd seen the social media posts from cousins, friends, everyone buzzing about the wedding of the year. Why? I'd asked, my voice breaking. Why don't you want me there? Don't make this dramatic, Elara. It's not about you. It's my day and I get to choose who's there. Just be happy for me. For once, let me have something without you trying to steal the spotlight. She'd hung up before I could respond. I'd stood there in my kitchen, the phone dead in my hand, tears streaming down my face. Julian had been away that week, one of his frequent trips. I'd been alone with the pain, trying to understand what I'd done to deserve such cruelty from my own sister. That night I called my mother. She doesn't want me at the wedding, I'd sobbed. Mom, please. I don't understand. What did I do? My mother's sigh had been deep, weary. Elara, honey, you need to respect your sister's wishes. This is her special day. Don't make it about your feelings. I'm not trying to make it about me. I just want to be there for my sister. I want to meet the man she's going to marry. Why is that so wrong? It's complicated. My mother's voice had gone cold, distant. That tone she used when the discussion was over. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for the people we love is give them space. Lena has asked for space. Give it to her. But, Elara, let it go. I hadn't let it go. I couldn't. The exclusion had festered in my chest like an infected wound. Julian had come home from his trip 2 days later, and I'd fallen into his arms, seeking comfort. They don't want me at Lena's wedding, I'd whispered against his chest, breathing in his cologne. The same cologne I could smell even now wafting up from the church below. "That's awful, baby," he'd murmured, stroking my hair. "You deserve better than that. Your family doesn't appreciate you." His arms had tightened around me and I'd felt safe. Protected. What a fool I'd been. "I don't understand why she's being so secretive about this guy," I'd said. "It's like she's hiding him." Julian had gone very still. Just for a moment. Then he'd kissed the top of my head. "Maybe she's just nervous. Weddings make people crazy. Try not to take it personally." "I have a weird feeling about this whole thing," I'd confessed. "Something feels wrong." "Your instincts are probably right," he'd said, and I could hear the smile in his voice now, the mockery I'd been too trusting to catch then. "But sometimes we have to let people make their own mistakes. Even our family." 3 days ago he'd kissed me goodbye at the door of our apartment, his overnight bag slung over his shoulder. "Conference in Chicago," he'd said. "I'll be back Monday. I love you, Alara." "I love you too," I'd whispered against his lips. He tasted like lies. The church had been listed in one of the posts I'd seen. St. Catherine's downtown. The wedding was today, Saturday at 2. I'd checked Julian's calendar on his laptop. I knew his password, though he didn't know I knew it. The conference dates lined up perfectly with the wedding. Too perfectly. A cold, creeping suspicion had begun to wind its way through my gut. It was insane. Impossible. But I couldn't shake it. This morning I'd called the hotel in Chicago where he was supposedly staying. "I need to leave a message for Julian Thorne," I'd said. "Room number." "I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't have anyone registered under that name." My blood had turned to ice water. I tried his cell. Straight to voicemail. "You've reached Julian Thorne. Leave a message." I'd dressed in black, covered my distinctive auburn hair with a scarf, and driven to St. Catherine's. I'd slipped in through a side entrance while the staff was distracted with decorations and guests. I'd climbed the narrow stairs to the choir loft and used and dusty. And I'd waited. Now as I watched my husband take my sister's hand and turn to face the altar, I understood. I finally understood everything. The secrecy. The exclusion. The lies. My mother's cold distance. My father's avoidance. Lena's cruelty. They all knew. They all knew he was mine, and they'd decided she deserved him more. The minister began to speak, his voice carrying through the vaulted space. Words about love and commitment and sacred bonds. Each word was a knife twisting in my gut. I should scream. I should stand up and shout the truth like in the movies. "I object. He's already married. To me." But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, frozen in this nightmare. My voice was locked somewhere deep in my chest, trapped beneath the crushing weight of betrayal. Below I could see my parents in the front row. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, the picture of a joyful mother of the bride. My father stood tall and proud. They were both smiling. They knew. God help me, they had to know. When had it started? How long had Julian been sleeping with both of us? How many times had he left my bed and gone to hers? How many lies had been carefully constructed, elaborate alibis, fictional business trips? If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The minister's words echoed through the church. This was it. This was the moment. All I had to do was stand up. Open my mouth. Tell the truth. I gripped the railing, tried to force myself to rise. But my body wouldn't obey. It wasn't fear that held me back. It was something else. Something colder and sharper. If I spoke now, what would happen? Chaos. Scandal. Julian would spin some story. Lena would cry and play the victim. My parents would somehow make it my fault. And I would be the crazy, jealous sister who ruined the wedding. No, I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I wasn't going to be the villain in their story. The moment passed. The minister moved on. Julian Alexander Thorne, do you take Lena Marie Ashford to be your lawfully wedded wife? Julian's voice rang out, clear and strong. I do. Something inside me cracked. A fissure ran through my soul, splitting me into before and after. The woman I had been, the trusting, loving, desperate to be accepted woman, died in that moment. What rose from her ashes was something different. Something harder. Lena Marie Ashford, do you take Julian Alexander Thorne to be your lawfully wedded husband? Lena's voice was breathy, theatrical. I do. Of course she did. Lena had never been denied anything she wanted in her entire life. Why would she start now? By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Julian pulled Lena into his arms. The same arms that had held me this morning. His lips found hers in a kiss that was far too passionate for a church, and the guests erupted into applause and cheers. I tasted blood. I'd bitten through my bottom lip without realizing it. They turned to face the crowd, beaming. Married. My husband was now my sister's husband. Did that make me his wife or his mistress? Was our marriage even legal? Was theirs? Questions spiraled through my mind as I watched them process back down the aisle. Lena's hand was locked on Julian's arm, possessive. Triumphant. He knew. She absolutely knew what she'd done, what she was doing. And she was enjoying it. I should have left. I should have climbed down from that loft, gotten in my car, driven straight to a lawyer or the police or anyone who could help me make sense of this insanity. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was a moth drawn to the flame that was burning me alive. I needed to see more. I needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal before I decided how to burn their world down. The reception was being held at the Grandview Estate, a sprawling mansion on the edge of town that my family could never have afforded. I knew this because my cousin had posted about it online, gushing about the venue. I followed at a distance, my car several vehicles behind the wedding procession. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I'd stopped crying. I was beyond tears now, in some strange, numb place where everything felt both hyperreal and completely surreal. The estate was surrounded by gardens and a tall iron fence. Security guards were checking invitations at the gate. Of course, Lena would have security. To keep out the riffraff. People like her own sister. I parked down the road and circled around on foot. The property backed up to a wooded area, and the fence, while tall, wasn't impossible to climb for someone motivated enough. I'd been rock climbing as a hobby for years. This was nothing. My dress tore on the iron spikes at the top of the fence, but I made it over. I dropped into a manicured hedge, leaves and twigs catching in my hair. I didn't care. I was beyond caring about my appearance. The reception was in full swing on the back terrace. White tents billowed in the gentle breeze. Crystal chandeliers hung from tent poles. Waiters in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A band played soft jazz. It was elegant and expensive and everything Lena had always wanted. I stayed in the shadows of the garden, moving between hedges and trees, getting closer. I found a spot behind a large stone fountain where I could see but not be seen. The water's babbling covered any sound I might make. Julian and Lena sat at a sweetheart table on a raised platform, the king and queen of this grotesque ball. They were feeding each other cake, laughing. His hand rested on her thigh, intimately high. I'd seen that hand on my own thigh 1,000 times. My stomach turned. I pressed my hand to my mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. Beautiful ceremony, wasn't it? A voice nearby made me freeze. Two women, older, society types dripping in pearls and judgment, stood near my hiding spot, smoking cigarettes. Gorgeous. Though I heard there was some family drama. The bride has a sister who wasn't invited. Really? How scandalous. Why not? I heard she's unstable. Jealous type. Lena was worried she'd make a scene. My fingernails dug into my palms hard enough to draw blood. Well, Lena's certainly glowing. And that husband of hers. My God. If I were 30 years younger. They laughed, the sound like breaking glass in my ears, and moved away. Unstable. Jealous. That's the story they were telling. I was the problem. The difficult sister. The one who couldn't be happy for Lena's joy. I watched Julian stand and tap his champagne glass. The crowd quieted. He was going to give a speech. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice warm and sincere. The voice I'd heard whisper sweet nothings in the dark. This is the happiest day of my life. Lies. Every word was a lie. When I met Lena, I knew immediately that she was special. Different from anyone I'd ever known. Different. Not the first. Different. She's brilliant, beautiful, kind, and generous. She makes me want to be a better man. The guests made appreciative noises. I wanted to scream. I know we've had to keep our relationship quiet for various reasons. His pause was deliberate. But I want everyone here to know that from the moment I saw her, there was no one else. She is my everything. No one else. The words were specifically chosen. A message maybe. Or a justification. From the moment I saw her. When had that been? At our wedding? Before? How long had I been the fool? Lena stood and Julian wrapped his arm around her waist. She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, the picture of a blissful bride. When she spoke, her voice carried across the crowd. I want to thank everyone for respecting our privacy these past few months. I know some people didn't understand why we kept things quiet. Her eyes scanned the crowd, almost as if she was looking for me. But sometimes when you find something precious, you need to protect it. Even from those who might try to take it from you. The hidden meaning in her words was clear to me. This had been a competition and she'd won. My father stood next, raising his glass. To my beautiful daughter Lena and to Julian. May your love be as strong and enduring as your mother's and mine. Everyone drank. My mother was crying again, clinging to my father's arm. The betrayal from Julian and Lena was a hot, searing pain. But the betrayal from my parents was something else entirely. It was a deep, cold ache settling into my bones. They were my family. They were supposed to protect me. Instead, they'd fed me to the wolves and cheered while I was devoured. As the reception continued, I remained in my hiding spot, watching, waiting. For what, I wasn't sure. Understanding, maybe. Or the right moment to act. But the longer I watched, the more fragments of memory clicked into place. Puzzle pieces I'd been too blind to see as part of a larger picture. 6 months ago, Julian had started working late more often. Big client, he'd said. Could really set us up if I land this deal. 6 months ago was when Lena got engaged. 4 months ago, I'd found a receipt in Julian's jacket pocket for an expensive restaurant downtown. When I'd asked him about it, he'd said it was a business dinner. But the date on the receipt was a Saturday. Julian didn't work Saturdays. Must have been a mistake on the receipt, he'd said, barely looking up from his laptop. You know how restaurants are with their systems. I'd let it go. I trusted him. 3 months ago, Lena had suddenly needed to borrow money from our parents. A lot of money. For investments, she'd said vaguely when I'd overheard my mother talking about it. Lena had a good job in marketing, but she'd always lived beyond her means. Our parents had given her the money, of course. They always did. Now I wondered if that money had gone toward this wedding. This obscenely expensive reception. The designer dress she was wearing. 2 months ago, I'd noticed my mother being cold whenever I mentioned Julian. I'd thought she was just being moody. He got like that sometimes, distant and critical. But maybe it wasn't about me at all. Maybe it was guilt. 1 month ago, I'd come home early from a shift that got cut short and found Julian in our bedroom on the phone. He jumped when I walked in, almost dropping the device. I have to go, he'd said quickly into the phone. Yeah. Later. He'd hung up before I could hear any response. Who was that? I'd asked. Work. Just work. He'd kissed my forehead, but his eyes had slid away from mine. You're home early. Slow night. They didn't need me. I'd started to undress, tired. Want to order dinner? Actually, I need to run out. Forgot I promised to meet a client. He was already grabbing his jacket. Now. It's 8 o'clock. I know, I'm sorry. I'll be back soon. And he'd left before I could say anything else. He'd come home at midnight smelling like perfume. When I'd asked about it, he'd laughed. The client's wife was there. She's very huggy. European. You know how it is. I hadn't known. But I'd let it go. I always let it go. God, I'd been so pathetically trusting. A commotion at the reception pulled me from my spiral of memories. Lena was standing now, holding court with a group of her friends. I could hear snippets of their conversation. So romantic, though. A secret relationship. But why secret? I don't understand. Lena's laugh was light, practiced. Let's just say there were complications. People who wouldn't have understood. Who might have tried to interfere. She sipped her champagne. But we're together now, and that's all that matters. You're so brave, one of the friends gushed. I could never go through all that secrecy. Love is worth fighting for, Lena said. Worth protecting. Even if it means making hard choices. Hard choices. Like stealing your sister's husband. Like lying to her face for months. Like erasing her from your life so you could take everything from her. I felt something inside me harden further. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. No, anger was too small a word. I was furious. I was incandescent with rage. They had taken everything from me. My husband. My family. My sense of self. They had made me doubt my own worth, my own perceptions. They had gaslit me into thinking I was the problem. And they were celebrating. They were laughing and drinking champagne and acting like victims who had overcome some great obstacle when they were the villains. They were the monsters. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steadier now, guided by cold purpose. I started taking photos. Julian and Lena kissing. Julian's hand on her waist. The two of them at the sweetheart table, his wedding ring. A ring I'd never seen before, glinting on his finger next to mine. Evidence. I would need evidence. Then I opened my voice recorder app and started making my way closer, staying in the shadows. If I could get audio of them talking, admitting to the affair, it would help. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew I needed ammunition. I was so focused on getting closer, on documenting everything, that I didn't notice someone had spotted me until it was too late. "Excuse me, ma'am?" A security guard was walking toward me through the garden. "This is a private event. Can I see your invitation?" My heart hammered. I could run. Should run. But instead I stepped out of the shadows, pulling off my scarf. "Let them see me. Let them all see me." "I don't need an invitation," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm family." The guard looked confused. He spoke into his radio. "I've got a situation by the East Garden. Female claiming to be family. No invitation." Within moments, chaos. My mother appeared first, her face going white when she saw me. Then my father, his expression hardening into anger. And finally Lena with Julian right behind her. The look on Lena's face when she saw me wasn't shock. It was annoyance. Like I was a stain on her perfect day. But Julian's face went through a rapid cascade of emotions. Fear. And then chillingly nothing. His expression went completely blank, like a mask sliding into place. "Ilara," my mother hissed, rushing toward me. "What are you doing here? You can't be here." "Can't I?" I looked past her to Julian and Lena. "I just wanted to congratulate the happy couple." "You need to leave," my father said, his voice low and threatening. "Now. Before you embarrass yourself further." "Embarrass myself?" A laugh bubbled out of me, high and slightly unhinged. "That's really what you're worried about? My embarrassment?" Lena stepped forward, positioning herself slightly in front of Julian. "Proactive. Ilara, please. Don't do this. Don't make a scene." "A scene?" I looked at her, really looked at her. My sister. We'd shared a room growing up. I'd braided her hair and helped her study for tests. I'd been there when she'd had her heart broken by her first boyfriend. When had she become this person? Or had she always been this person and I'd been too blind to see? "You knew," I said softly. "You knew he was married. You knew he was mine." The garden had gone very quiet. The guests who had noticed the commotion were watching now, an audience for this family drama. "I don't know what you're talking about," Lena said, but her voice wavered. Just slightly. I turned to Julian. "Aren't you going to say something? Anything?" He met my eyes finally. And what I saw there was worse than guilt or shame. It was calculation. He was trying to figure out his next move, how to play this. "Ilara," he said gently, the way you'd speak to a confused child. "You're clearly upset. Maybe we should talk about this privately." "Privately," I repeated. "Like how you privately married my sister while you're married to me?" Gasps from the watching crowd. My mother made a strangled sound. "That's insane," Lena said quickly, loudly. "Julian and I have been together for 8 months. He's not married to anyone." "Really?" I pulled out my phone, hands shaking now with adrenaline. "Then what's this?" I pulled up a photo. My wedding photo. Julian and me 2.5 years ago, both beaming at the camera. I held it up for everyone to see. The crowd erupted into whispers and murmurs. "That's photoshopped," Lena said immediately. "She's obsessed with Julian. She's been stalking us. That's why we didn't invite her. We were afraid of this." The lie was so bold, so shameless that I actually laughed. "Photoshopped. Right. And I suppose our marriage certificate is photoshopped too? The apartment we share? The bank accounts? The life we've built?" Julian stepped forward. His face was sympathetic now, concerned. The mask was in full effect. "Ilara, I think you need help. Professional help. This fantasy you've constructed." "Stop." My voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare gaslight me. Not now. Not after everything. I looked at my parents. My mother's hand was pressed to her mouth. My father looked like he wanted to murder me. You knew, I said to them. Both of you knew he was my husband. When did you decide to give him to her instead? When did you all decide I didn't matter? Elara, my mother started, tears streaming down her face now. Please, honey. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't call me honey. Don't pretend you care. You made your choice. I looked at all of them, my parents, my sister, my husband. You all made your choices. She's having some kind of breakdown, Lena said to the gathered crowd. I'm so sorry, everyone. My sister has issues. Mental health issues. We've been trying to get her help. More lies. Stacked on top of lies. Building a wall of false narrative that would bury me. I could see it happening in real time. The crowd's sympathy shifting. The looks of shock turning to pity and discomfort. They wanted to believe Lena. She was the beautiful bride. I was the crazy woman in a torn black dress with leaves in her hair who'd climbed over a fence and was ranting about impossible things. I have proof, I said desperately. I have evidence. Our marriage license. Photos. Years of photos. Bank statements. People who know us as a married couple. Forged, Julian said quietly. All of it forged. Elara, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to contact the authorities if you keep harassing us. Harassing them. I was harassing them. The security guards were moving closer now, ready to escort me out. Ready to remove the problem. I looked at Julian one more time. I loved you, I whispered. I loved you so much. Something flickered in his eyes. Just for a moment. Regret? Guilt? Or maybe just annoyance that I wasn't playing along with his narrative. I'm sorry you feel that way, he said. But you need to move on. This delusion isn't healthy. The guards grabbed my arms, gentle but firm. They started walking me toward the gate. I could have fought. Could have screamed. Could have made it even worse. But I didn't. I let them lead me away, my head held high, even as tears streamed down my face. Behind me I heard Lena's voice, artificially bright. I'm so sorry about that, everyone. Let's get back to celebrating, shall we? The band is going to start up again. And they did. Within minutes, the music was playing again, the champagne was flowing, and the incident was being smoothed over. Explained away. The crazy sister. The wedding crasher. Just a minor disruption in an otherwise perfect day. They escorted me to my car. I drove away with my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't go home. I couldn't face our apartment, the bed we'd shared, the life that had been a lie. Instead, I drove to a hotel on the outskirts of town. A cheap, anonymous place where I paid cash and gave a fake name. In the sterile, impersonal room, I finally fell apart. I collapsed on the scratchy comforter and sobbed until there was nothing left inside me. I cried for the marriage I'd thought I had. For the family I'd never really had. For the woman I'd been who trusted and believed and loved. That woman was dead now. And I was glad. She'd been weak. She'd been blind. She'd been a victim. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a splitting headache, but my mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in months, maybe years. I made a list. I was good at lists. It was one of the skills that made me a good nurse. The ability to organize, prioritize, and execute under pressure. Evidence I have. Marriage certificate, original in our safety deposit box. Joint bank account statements, lease agreement with both our names, photos spanning 2.5 years, gifts with inscriptions, people who know us as a married couple, co-workers, friends, neighbors. His belongings in our apartment, mail addressed to him at our address. Evidence I need. Proof that he knew about Lena's wedding, proof that my family knew about both relationships, anything showing premeditation and coordination. Goals. Expose the truth, ensure they face consequences, get my life back, make them understand what they've done. I started with the apartment. I drove there mid-morning, knowing Julian would likely stay with Lena at a hotel on their wedding night. The thought made me sick, but I pushed through it. The apartment looked exactly as I'd left it. His coffee mug was still in the sink from 2 days ago. His shoes by the door. His jacket on the hook. Evidence of a life shared. I started in his office. Julian was meticulous about most things, but he had a habit of hiding things in plain sight, convinced I'd never look. A file cabinet he kept locked, but I knew where he kept the key, inside a hollowed-out book on the shelf. Plus, inside the cabinet I found a treasure trove. Bank statements for an account I didn't know about. Large withdrawals over the past 8 months. One particularly large one 2 weeks ago, around the same time Lena would have needed to pay vendors for the wedding. Receipts. Hotel rooms. Restaurants. Jewelry stores. All dating back 8 months. And then at the bottom of the drawer a burner phone. My hands trembled as I powered it on. It took a few minutes to charge enough to boot up. When it did, I found exactly what I needed. Text messages. Hundreds of them. Between Julian and Lena. I sat on the floor of his office and read through them, each one a knife in my heart. Lena, I can't stop thinking about last night. Julian, me neither. You're incredible. Lena, when are you going to tell her? Julian, soon I promise. I just need to figure out the right way. That was from 7 months ago. Julian, I hate lying to her. But I can't give you up. Lena, you won't have to lie much longer. Once we're married it won't matter. Julian, what about Alara? Lena, what about her? She'll get over it. He always does. She's weak. My vision blurred. I wiped my eyes and kept reading. Julian, your parents know. Your mom saw us at the restaurant. Lena, and? Julian, she said she won't tell Alara. She said you deserve to be happy. Lena, she's right. I do deserve to be happy. More than Alara does, anyway. Julian, that's harsh. Lena, it's true. She's always been the martyr, the victim. Poor Alara, nobody appreciates her. It's exhausting. You married her because you felt sorry for her. You love me because of who I am. Julian, you're right. You're always right. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I took screenshots of everything. I forwarded the messages to my own email, to a cloud storage account Julian didn't know about. I documented everything. Further down in the messages. Lena, we need to keep her away from the wedding. He can't know until after. Julian agreed. I'll tell her I have a work conference. Lena, what if she finds out before? Julian, she won't. Alara trusts me completely. It's actually kind of sad. Kind of sad. My complete trust in him was sad. Lena, Mom and Dad are on board with keeping her away. I told them she'd make a scene. Julian, will they be okay with everything? After. Lena, they like you better than her anyway. Always have. You're successful, charming. He's just, there. They'll be fine. They liked him better than their own daughter. Better than me. I kept reading even though each message was agony. Julian, what are we going to do about the marriage? Legally I'm still married to Alara. Lena, we'll figure it out. Worst case, the marriage to me won't be legal yet and you'll divorce her and we'll get remarried. Best case, she's so humiliated she doesn't even fight it. Just disappears. Julian, you really think she'd do that? Lena, Alara has spent her whole life trying not to be a burden. When she realizes she's lost everything, her husband, her family, she'll slink away. That's who she is. That's who I was. Past tense. The most recent messages were from yesterday during the reception after I'd been escorted out. Lena, that was insane. I can't believe she actually showed up. Julian, I know. I didn't think she had it in her. Lena, do you think anyone believed her? Julian, no. You handled it perfectly. The mental health angle was genius. Lena, I've been setting that up for weeks. Telling people she's unstable. Just in case. Julian, you're brilliant. This is why I love you. Lena, love you too. Now get back here. I want my husband. Julian, on my way, Mrs. Thorne. Mrs. Thorne. My name. My identity. Stolen. I sat there on the floor for a long time, the phone in my lap, feeling the last pieces of my old self crumble away. They had planned this. Meticulously. They had coordinated with my parents. They had built a narrative to discredit me before I even knew there was anything to discredit. They had thought of everything. Except one thing. They had underestimated who I would become when I had nothing left to lose. I spent the next 3 days in methodical preparation. I called in sick to work. Not entirely a lie, I was sick to my soul, and focused entirely on building my case. First I went to see a lawyer. Not just any lawyer but the best divorce attorney in the state. Her name was Catherine Vale and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless. Her office was sleek and expensive, all glass and chrome. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. Tell me everything, she said after her assistant brought me coffee in a delicate china cup. I told her. I showed her the marriage certificate, the bank statements, the photos. I showed her the messages from the burner phone. I told her about the wedding, about being excluded, about the confrontation. Catherine listened without interrupting, her expression neutral. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and steepled her fingers. "This is one of the most egregious cases I've seen," she said finally. "And I've seen a lot. Can you help me? I can do better than help you. I can destroy them." She smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "But I need to know what you want. Revenge? Justice? Money? All of the above. I want them to face consequences," I said. "Real consequences. I want everyone to know the truth. I want my family to understand what they've done. And I want Julian to lose everything the way I lost everything." Catherine nodded. "Then here's what we're going to do." She outlined a plan that was complex, thorough, and absolutely merciless. First, we would file for divorce citing adultery. We would include all the evidence. The messages, the photos from the wedding, everything. We would make it public record. Second, we would file a fraud claim against Julian for using marital assets to fund his relationship with Lena. Every dinner, every hotel room, every penny he'd spent on her had been partially my money. Community property. Third, we would send cease and desist letters to both Lena and Julian, along with letters to my parents, outlining exactly what we knew and what we had evidence of. Fourth, and this was the part that made me smile for the first time in days, we would contact every single person who had been at that wedding. We would provide them with the evidence. The truth. We would systematically dismantle the narrative that I was crazy. "This will be brutal," Catherine warned me. "It will get ugly. They will fight back. Your family will likely choose them over you. Are you prepared for that?" "They already chose them over me," I said. "I have nothing left to lose." "Good." Catherine extended her hand. "Then let's begin." I shook it, sealing my fate in theirs. The divorce papers were served to Julian 3 days later, at Lena's apartment where he'd apparently moved in. I knew this because I'd hired a private investigator. Catherine had recommended one, to track his movements. The investigator, a woman named Rita who looked like someone's kindly grandmother but had the instincts of a bloodhound, had provided me with a detailed report. Julian hadn't been back to our apartment since the wedding. He'd moved all of his essential items out while I was at work the day before the wedding, leaving just enough to maintain the appearance that he still lived there. He'd planned his exit carefully. Of course he had. Rita served the papers herself, posing as a delivery person. She caught it on a hidden camera. I watched the footage in Catherine's office. Julian answered the door in a t-shirt and pajama pants, clearly relaxed. He signed for the package, opened it. I watched his face drain of color as he read the first page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. He flipped through the documents and I could see the moment he got to the evidence section. His hand actually shook. Lena appeared behind him wearing one of his shirts. "What is it?" He didn't answer, just handed her the papers. I watched her face cycle through shock, anger, and then something like fear. "She can't do this," Lena said, her voice tinny through the camera's audio. "She can't prove any of this." "She has the messages," Julian said, his voice hollow. "From the burner phone. She has all of them." "How? How did she get them?" "I don't know. I left the phone in my office. I thought." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture familiar and now revolting. "I thought I was being careful." "This is bad," Lena said. "Julian, this is really bad. If this goes public." "I know. My job. My reputation. Everything. I know." His voice was sharp now, angry. "Do you think I don't know what this means for me? I could lose my license. Financial fraud, bigamy." "You're not a bigamist," Lena said quickly. "Our marriage isn't legal. The officiant was fake." I sat up straighter. Catherine leaned forward. "What?" Julian's voice was a whisper. "I made sure our marriage wasn't legal," Lena said. "Just in case. The minister was an actor friend of mine. So technically you're still only married to her. Which means you can divorce her and then we can get married for real." "You," Julian stared at her. "You planned that? You knew our marriage wasn't legal?" "I was protecting us." Lena's voice went high, defensive. "If the marriage wasn't legal, you can't be charged with bigamy. It's just an affair. Messy but not criminal." The silence stretched between them. "I need to call my lawyer," Julian said finally. The video ended there. Catherine sat back with a satisfied smile. Well, she said. That's interesting. So they committed fraud on all those wedding guests. Everyone gave gifts, money for a wedding that wasn't legal. That opens up a whole new avenue of liability. Can we use this? I asked. Oh, we can definitely use this. She made a note. This gets better and better. Over the next week, the legal machinery ground into motion. Julian hired a lawyer, a slick corporate type who immediately tried to paint me as the aggressor. They filed a countersuit claiming I had stolen Julian's phone and violated his privacy. Catherine laughed when she saw it. They're scrambling. This is the move of someone who knows they're caught. She filed a motion to include the burner phone messages as evidence, along with an affidavit from me explaining how I'd found the phone in our shared marital home, in an unlocked drawer. Not stolen. Discovered. The judge allowed it. Then came the cease and desist letters. Catherine had them delivered by process server, formal and legally binding. One to Julian. One to Lena. And once to my parents. My mother called me for the first time in 2 weeks, her voice shrill with panic. Alara, what have you done? What is this letter? It's exactly what it says, Mother. It's a formal notice that I have evidence of a conspiracy to defraud me and ruin my reputation. Conspiracy? Are you insane? We didn't. You knew, I said, my voice cold. You knew Julian was my husband. You knew he was having an affair with Lena. You helped them keep me away from the wedding. You lied to me. For months. We were trying to protect you. Protect me? By helping my husband marry my sister. It's complicated, Alara. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain how this was protecting me. Silence. Then my father's voice in the background. Hang up. Don't say anything else. Alara, please. My mother tried again. Don't do this. Don't air our family's dirty laundry in public. Think about what this will do to all of us. I am thinking about it, I said. I'm thinking about it very clearly. Maybe you should have thought about it before you betrayed your own daughter. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but I felt strangely calm. The cord was cut. The family that had never truly valued me was gone, and I was the one who had severed the tie. It should have hurt more. But I'd already grieved for them. There was nothing left but cold resolution. Catherine's final stroke of genius was the public exposure. Not a social media post or a dramatic confrontation. Something better. Something more permanent. She had a colleague who worked in journalism, an investigative reporter for the city's major newspaper. Catherine reached out and pitched the story. Bigamy in high society. Local wedding of the year built on lies. The reporter, a woman named Joanna Reed, was immediately interested. She interviewed me for hours, verified every piece of evidence, and built a story that was meticulous and damning. The article ran on a Sunday front page of the lifestyle section, with a photo of Lena and Julian from their wedding prominently featured. The headline read, "The Wedding That Wasn't. How One Woman Discovered Her Husband Married Her Sister." It detailed everything. The timeline of my marriage to Julian. The affair. The wedding I was excluded from. The text messages, published with names redacted, but anyone who knew us would recognize the details. The fake marriage ceremony. My parents' complicity. Most devastatingly, it included quotes from me. I loved him with everything I had, the article quoted me saying. I trusted my family to have my back. When I discovered the truth, it wasn't just my marriage that died. It was my faith in the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. That betrayal is worse than anything my husband did. Joanna had also managed to get a few quotes from wedding guests, people willing to go on record. We had no idea there was a wife. If we'd known, we never would have attended. We gave a very expensive gift. I feel completely deceived, said one guest. Another said, the whole thing seemed off. The secrecy, the rush. Now it makes sense. This is appalling. The article went viral within hours. It was picked up by regional news, then national outlets. By Monday morning, wedding scandal and Lena's full name were trending on social media. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments, mostly supportive of me, condemning Julian and Lena and my parents. People shared their own stories of betrayal. Strangers sent messages of support. A few people tried to defend Lena and Julian, suggesting there was more to the story, that I must have been a terrible wife for him to stray. But they were drowned out by the majority who saw the situation for what it was. A cruel, calculated betrayal. Lena's employer, a prestigious marketing firm, issued a statement saying they were investigating the matter and took allegations of ethical violations seriously. By Wednesday, Lena was on administrative leave. Julian's financial consulting firm dropped him as a partner. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for fraud and ethical violations," their statement read. "Mr. Thorne is no longer affiliated with our company." The wedding venue released a statement saying they had been deceived and were reviewing their vetting procedures. My parents' social circle, the country club set they'd spent decades cultivating, turned on them. I heard through a cousin, one who had reached out to express support, that they'd been asked not to attend certain events. That whispers followed them wherever they went. The court of public opinion had delivered its verdict, and it was brutal. With the public exposure came unexpected consequences. People started coming forward with information I hadn't known about. A woman named Sophia contacted me through Catherine's office. She had been Julian's girlfriend before me. She had a story that made my blood run cold. "He did the same thing to me," she told me when we met for coffee. She was pretty, put together, with sad eyes that suggested old wounds. "I was with him for 3 years. We were engaged. And then I found out he was seeing someone else on the side. When I confronted him, he made me feel crazy. He said I was paranoid, jealous. He gaslit me so thoroughly that I actually apologized to him for doubting him." "What happened?" I asked. "I found proof eventually. Photos on his laptop that he forgot to delete. I broke it off, but he'd already poisoned all our mutual friends against me. Told them I was unstable. By the time I tried to tell people the truth, no one believed me." She took a shaky breath. "When I saw the article about you, everything came back. I wanted you to know that this is a pattern. He's done this before. You're not crazy. You're not the problem." "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for telling me." She wasn't the only one. 2 other women reached out with similar stories. Julian had a history of overlapping relationships, of manipulation, of making women doubt their own sanity. Catherine added all of this to our case file. "It establishes a pattern of behavior," she explained. "Makes it harder for him to claim this was a one-time mistake." The divorce proceedings were moving forward. Julian's lawyer tried every tactic to delay, to obfuscate, to paint me as vindictive. But Catherine was better. She was relentless. We had a hearing for the division of assets. Julian argued that he should get to keep most of our savings because he had earned more during the marriage. Catherine destroyed that argument by showing that I had supported him emotionally and domestically, allowing him to work long hours and travel, and that he had depleted our assets to fund his affair. Mr. Thorne spent over $50,000 of marital funds on his affair with Ms. Ashford, Catherine stated, presenting receipts and bank statements. Hotel rooms, dinners, jewelry, contributions to the wedding that he intended to be fraudulent. "My client is entitled to compensation for this dissipation of assets." The judge, a woman in her 60s who had been stone-faced through most of the proceedings, looked at Julian with undisguised distaste. "Mr. Thorne," she said, "I have been a family court judge for 20 years. I have seen many cases of infidelity. But the calculated cruelty and deception in this case is extraordinary. Not only did you betray your wife, but you conspired with her family to do so. You used marital assets to fund your affair. And then you attempted to paint your wife as mentally unstable when she discovered the truth." Julian's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge held up a hand. "I'm not finished. This court finds that Mr. Thorne is entirely at fault for the dissolution of this marriage. Mrs. Thorne is awarded 60% of all marital assets, including the savings account, the value of the vehicles, and all furnishings. Mr. Thorne is also ordered to pay Mrs. Thorne's legal fees in full, as well as compensatory damages in the amount of $100,000 for emotional distress and fraud." I felt Catherine's hand squeeze mine under the table. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal charges related to fraud." Julian's face was ashen. Lena, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom, let out a small gasp. The gavel came down. "We're adjourned." Outside the courtroom, Catherine was beaming. "That went even better than I hoped. She destroyed him." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we collect. His assets will be frozen until he pays what he owes you. If the DA decides to press charges, he could face criminal penalties. Either way, his life as he knew it is over. I should have felt triumphant, victorious. But mostly I just felt tired. Lena tried to contact me a week after the hearing. She sent an email to an old address I rarely checked. I only saw it because Catherine had advised me to monitor all my accounts for any attempts at contact. The email was long, rambling, and deeply manipulative. Alara, it began. I don't expect you to forgive me. I know what I did was wrong. But I need you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. Julian and I, we fell in love. Neither of us planned it. It just happened. You know how it is when you meet someone and there's that instant connection. I did know. I'd felt that with Julian. Before I knew he was a liar and a sociopath. I know the timing was bad, the email continued. And I know we should have told you sooner. But we were afraid. Afraid of your reaction. You can be so intense, Alara. So emotional. We didn't think you'd understand. My fault. Always my fault for feeling things. Mom and Dad were just trying to help everyone, Lena wrote. They thought if we could just get through the wedding, then we could all sit down and talk like adults. But you had to crash the wedding. You had to make a scene. You couldn't just let me have one day. I read the email 3 times, each time feeling my anger build. She was still playing the victim. Still making me the villain in her story. I forwarded it to Catherine without responding. Classic Darvo, Catherine said when she called me later. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She's denying responsibility, attacking you for your response, and positioning herself as the victim. Don't engage. Anything you say will be twisted and used against you. I didn't engage. But I saved the email. More evidence of her mindset, her refusal to take real accountability. My parents tried a different approach. They showed up at my apartment. The apartment I'd kept in the settlement, the one Julian had abandoned. I saw them through the peephole and considered not answering. But I was done hiding. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Alara, my mother started, her eyes red-rimmed. Please. We need to talk. So talk, I said. My father looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. Can we come in? No. My mother flinched. Sweetheart, please. We're still your parents. We love you. Do you? The question came out flat, emotionless. Because I'm having trouble seeing the love in any of this. We made mistakes, my father said. We admit that. But you have to understand we were in an impossible position. Impossible? You chose to side with my husband and my sister over me. That seems like a pretty clear position to me. It wasn't like that, my mother insisted. Lena came to us crying months ago. She said she'd met someone, that she was in love. When she told us it was Julian, we were shocked. We told her it was wrong, that she needed to end it. But you didn't tell me. We thought they would end it, my mother's voice rose. We thought if we just gave it time, the affair would fizzle out and you'd never have to know. We were trying to protect you from the pain. So you let them continue? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You knew for months and said nothing? We didn't know what to do, my father said. Lena swore they were going to stop. Then she got pregnant. The world tilted. What? She's pregnant, my mother said quietly. That's why they rushed the wedding. She's 12 weeks along. When she told us, what could we do? That's our grandchild. Our grandchild. Not my niece or nephew. Their grandchild. That's what mattered. So you sacrificed one daughter for another, I said numbly. Because she's giving you a grandchild. It's not like that. Get out. My voice was steady cold. Get out and don't come back. Alara. I said get out. The emotion finally broke through, my voice cracking. You chose. You made your choice. Now live with it. But don't come here and pretend you were trying to protect me. You were protecting yourselves. Your relationship with Lena. Your future grandchild. I was just collateral damage. That's not fair, my father said, his own anger surfacing. We're your parents. We'll always love you. But you're being selfish. You're tearing this family apart over pride. Pride. The word came out as a strangled laugh. You think this is about pride? My husband married my sister. With your blessing. And I'm the one being selfish. We didn't give our blessing, my mother said weakly. We didn't stop it. Same thing. I started to close the door. Enjoy your grandchild. I hope it's worth what you paid for it. Alara, please. I shut the door in their faces, locked it, slid down to the floor with my back against it, listening to my mother's muffled crying on the other side. Listening to my father's low voice trying to comfort her. After a few minutes, their footsteps retreated down the hallway. I sat there on the floor and felt absolutely nothing. I'd thought there might be some satisfaction in rejecting them the way they'd rejected me. But there was just emptiness. The pregnancy explained so much. The rush. The desperation to get me away from the wedding. They hadn't just stolen my husband, they were building a whole life together. A family. The family I'd dreamed of having with Julian one day. Had he ever wanted that with me? Or had I always been the placeholder, the for now, until something better came along? I pulled out my phone and called Catherine. Lena's pregnant, I said without preamble. My parents just told me. That's why they rushed the wedding. Catherine was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Numb. Angry. Relieved I'm not tied to him through a child. I pressed my free hand to my stomach, thinking about the pregnancy scare I'd had a year ago. It had turned out to be nothing, and Julian had seemed almost relieved. Now I knew why. Can we use this information? Potentially. It establishes motive for the fraud. They needed the wedding to happen quickly before she started showing. But Alara, I need to ask you something. How far do you want to take this? Because we can keep pushing, keep destroying them. But there's a point where revenge starts destroying you too. You need to think about what you really want. I want justice. Justice and revenge aren't always the same thing. I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the door. I want them to understand. To really understand what they did. I want consequences that matter. And then I want to move on. I want to build a life where they don't exist. Okay, Catherine said softly. Then let's finish this. Chapter 12. The Breaking Point. 2 weeks later, the DA's office announced they were pressing charges against Julian for wire fraud and theft. The marital funds he'd used to finance the affair had come from a joint account that included my direct deposited paychecks. Since he'd transferred money from that account to pay for things like Lena's engagement ring and wedding expenses without my knowledge or consent, it qualified as theft. He was arrested at Lena's apartment early on a Tuesday morning. The local news ran the perp walk footage. Julian in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. I watched it on the news while getting ready for work. I'd gone back to the hospital the week before, needing the structure and purpose. My colleagues had been awkwardly supportive, having all read about the scandal. But they gave me space, let me focus on the work, on the kids who needed me. Seeing Julian in handcuffs should have felt triumphant. Instead it just felt sad. This man I'd loved, who I'd built a life with, reduced to this. Had he ever been real? Or had I loved a ghost, a performance, a mask? The charges came with a bail hearing. Catherine attended, though I stayed away. She called me afterward. Bail was set at $100,000. His parents posted it. His parents. I'd met them twice. They'd seemed nice enough, if distant. They drove up from Florida. They're not happy. I overheard his mother in the hallway telling him he'd disgraced the family. Good. There's something else. Lena was at the hearing. She looked rough, Alara. Really rough. And when Julian came out, she tried to approach him, but he walked right past her. Didn't even acknowledge her. I absorbed this information. Trouble in paradise? Seems like it. Facing criminal charges has a way of clarifying what matters to people. My guess. Julian is realizing that Lena isn't worth losing everything for. A bitter part of me wanted to laugh. Lena had destroyed her relationship with me, torpedoed her reputation, lost her job, all for a man who was now discarding her like yesterday's trash. What happens next? I asked. The criminal trial will take months to prepare. In the meantime, the divorce will be finalized. We have the settlement agreement drafted. Once Julian signs it, you're free. Free. The word should have sounded liberating. Instead it sounded lonely. But lonely was better than betrayed. Lena's fall was slower than Julian's, but no less complete. Her administrative leave from work became a quiet termination 2 weeks after Julian's arrest. The official reason was reorganization, but everyone knew the truth. The company didn't want the scandal attached to their brand. She tried to get other jobs in marketing, but the viral nature of the story made her unhireable. Every potential employer could Google her name and find thousands of articles and social media posts about the wedding scandal. Her friends, the society crowd she'd cultivated so carefully, abandoned her one by one. Invitations dried up. Group chats went silent. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who'd stolen her sister's husband. I heard all this through my cousin Emma, who had firmly planted herself on my side and was feeding me updates. Part of me said I shouldn't listen, shouldn't care. But I couldn't help it. I needed to know that there were consequences. "She's living with your parents now," Emma told me over coffee one Saturday. Apparently Julian kicked her out of the apartment they were sharing. He's broke. All the money she had went to the wedding and legal fees. "And the baby?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Emma's face softened. "Still pregnant as far as I know. Due in about 5 months. I saw her at the grocery store last week. She looked small. Defeated. Nothing like the Lena we grew up with." I should have felt satisfaction. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? For her to lose everything the way I had? But I just felt hollow. "How are Mom and Dad handling it?" I asked, hating myself for caring. "Not well. Dad looks like he's aged 10 years. Mom is in complete denial, acting like everything is fine, but you can tell she's falling apart. They're social pariahs now. The country club asked them to resign their membership." The country club. My parents' entire social identity had been wrapped up in that membership. They'd worked for decades to afford it, to be accepted into that world. "I almost feel sorry for them," Emma said carefully. "Almost. Then I remember what they did to you and the sympathy evaporates." "They made their choice," I said, echoing the words I'd been repeating to myself like a mantra. "They have to live with it." But that night, alone in my apartment, I cried for them. For the parents I'd wished I had, who would have chosen me, protected me, loved me unconditionally. Those parents had never existed, but I mourned them anyway. 3 months after the courthouse confrontation, a letter arrived. Not an email, but an actual handwritten letter, delivered by mail. The return address was my parents' house. The handwriting was Lena's. I almost threw it away without opening it. Catherine had advised no contact. But curiosity won. I opened it standing in my kitchen, the afternoon light streaming through the windows. "Alara," it began. "I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything from you anymore. But I needed to write this even if you tear it up without reading it. I was wrong. Everything I did was wrong. I knew it was wrong while I was doing it, and I did it anyway. I told myself stories to justify it. That Julian loved me more than you, that you'd be fine, that I deserved to be happy. But they were all lies I told myself to excuse the inexcusable. The truth is, I've always been jealous of you. You were always the good one, the kind one, the one who cared about other people. I was the pretty one, the successful one, but it was all surface. You had depth. You had real relationships with people. I just had transactions. When I met Julian at that fundraiser. Yes, we met before you introduced us. He approached me first, actually. But you walked up and he shifted his attention to you, and I saw the way he looked at you. Like you mattered. Like you were real. I was engaged to someone else at the time. Do you remember? Thomas. He was boring but stable. I broke up with him 2 weeks after your wedding to Julian because I couldn't stand watching you be happy with the man who I decided should have been mine. I spent 2 years trying to forget about him. I dated other people. I threw myself into work. But whenever I saw you two together at family dinners, I felt this burning resentment. You didn't even appreciate him, I told myself. You didn't dress up enough, you worked too much, you were too tired to go out. I convinced myself you didn't deserve him. So I pursued him. I ran into him accidentally, at places I knew he'd be. I flirted. I made myself available. And eventually he responded. The affair started 8 months before the wedding. It was exciting at first. Forbidden. We talked about you sometimes, and he'd say things like, "She doesn't understand me like you do," and, "I made a mistake marrying her." I believed him because I wanted to believe him. But after the wedding, after he moved in with me, everything changed. The Julian who had been so attentive during the affair became distant. Distracted. He started taking calls he wouldn't let me hear. He started disappearing for hours. I found out 2 weeks ago that he's been seeing someone else. Another woman. Someone from his office building. The irony isn't lost on me. When I confronted him, he said the same things to me he probably said to you about me. That it just happened. That he didn't mean to hurt me. All the same lines. He left 3 days ago. Packed his stuff and moved in with her. He said the baby isn't his problem, that I should handle it. So now I'm alone. Pregnant. Unemployed. Living with mom and dad in my childhood bedroom like a failure. Everyone I know hates me. I can't get a job. I can't show my face anywhere without people whispering. And you know what the worst part is? I deserve all of it. Every single bit of suffering I'm going through, I deserve. But this baby doesn't deserve it. This innocent child didn't ask to be born into this mess. And I'm terrified. Terrified that I'm going to be a mother and I don't know how to be anything other than selfish. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for help. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. Julian is exactly who you discovered him to be. Mom and dad were wrong to choose me over you. And I was wrong about everything. You deserved better than all of us. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I'm truly deeply sorry. Lena. I read the letter 3 times, standing in my kitchen as the afternoon faded to evening. My hands were shaking by the end. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? An admission. An apology. Acknowledgement that they were wrong and I was right. So why did it feel so empty? I called Catherine. Lena sent me a letter. A confession, basically. Can we use it? Forward it to me. But Alara, do you want to use it? The divorce is almost finalized. Julian is facing criminal charges. Your parents are social outcasts. Lena has lost everything. At what point is it enough? I don't know, I whispered. I don't know what enough looks like. Maybe that's something you need to figure out before we proceed any further. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, the letter on the counter beside me. Lena was pregnant and alone. Julian had done to her exactly what he'd done to me, made her feel special, then discarded her when someone shinier came along. There was justice in that. A poetic symmetry. But there was also a baby. A child who would grow up surrounded by the wreckage of their parents' choices. I thought about the kids I worked with at the hospital. The innocent ones who suffered because of adult decisions they had no control over. This baby would be one of them. And like it or not, that baby was my niece or nephew. My blood. I sat with the letter for 3 days before I made my decision. On the 3rd day I called Emma. I need you to tell me the truth, I said. How bad is it? Really? Emma sighed. Spataler. Lena barely leaves her room. Your mom is having panic attacks. Your dad is on blood pressure medication. The stress is killing them. And financially? They've spent everything on lawyers for Lena. They're probably going to have to sell the house. And with a baby coming, they're going to lose everything, I finished. Yeah. I closed my eyes. If I wanted to help hypothetically, what would that look like? Are you serious? Emma's voice was sharp with surprise. After everything they did to you? I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. Because I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror. And I need to be able to move forward without this weight. Alara, you don't owe them anything. I know. But maybe that's exactly why I need to do this. Because I'm choosing to, not because I owe them. I called Catherine next. I want to drop the lawsuit against my parents, I said. Alara. I know what you're going to say. But I've thought about this. Julian is the one who wronged me. He's facing consequences. Lena has faced consequences. My parents. They were wrong. Horribly wrong. But they're still my parents. And there's a baby coming who didn't ask for any of this. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. What about the money they owe you? The emotional damages. Keep the case against Julian. Drop the one against my parents and Lena. I don't want their money. I just want them out of my life. You're sure? I'm sure. Hey. I'll file the dismissal. But Alara, this doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life. You can show mercy without sacrificing your boundaries. I know. That's exactly what I'm doing. The next step was harder. I wrote a letter of my own. To Lena. Lena, I received your letter. I believe that you're sorry and I believe that you're suffering. I'm dropping the lawsuit against you and our parents. Not because I forgive you, I'm not there yet and I may never be. But because I refuse to let what you did turn me into someone I don't recognize. I refuse to let your choices define the rest of my life. You're going to be a mother soon. That child deserves better than to grow up in the shadow of this scandal. So I'm drawing a line. The legal battle ends here. But make no mistake. This isn't reconciliation. I'm not coming back to the family. I'm not going to be at baby showers or holidays. I'm not going to play happy families and pretend this didn't happen. I'm letting go. Of you, of mom and dad, of the family I thought I had. I'm letting go so I can move forward. I hope you figure out how to be a better mother than you were a sister. That child deserves that much. Don't contact me again. I need space and time. Maybe one day I'll be ready to talk. But that day isn't today and it might not come for years. Take care of yourself and your baby. I mailed it before I could change my mind. Julian's trial happened 6 months after the arrest. I attended every day, sitting in the back of the courtroom watching him face the consequences of his choices. The prosecution built a meticulous case. They showed the paper trail of funds transferred from our joint account. They presented the text messages from the burner phone. They called witnesses. The jeweler who had sold Julian Lena's engagement ring, paid for with a check from our account. The wedding planner who had received payments from both Julian and Lena. Julian's defense tried to paint it as a domestic dispute, not a criminal matter. But the evidence was too clear. He had stolen marital funds. He had committed fraud. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge gave him 2 years in prison and ordered him to pay restitution, not just to me but to the wedding guests who had given gifts for a fraudulent marriage. Mr. Thorne, the judge said, her voice heavy with disdain, you have shown a pattern of manipulation, deception, and callous disregard for others. This court hopes that your time in prison will give you an opportunity to reflect on the harm you've caused and to become a better person. Though frankly, I have my doubts. Julian's face was stone as they led him away in handcuffs. He didn't look at me. Not once during the entire trial had he looked at me. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like closure. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I'd become a minor celebrity in the months since the story broke. The wronged wife, they called me. There had been interview requests from morning shows, podcasts, even a streaming service that wanted to make a documentary. I turned them all down. This wasn't a story I wanted to keep telling. Catherine stood beside me as I gave a brief statement. Justice has been served, I said simply. I hope this case reminds people that actions have consequences. Now I'm ready to move forward with my life. Do you have any message for your former husband? A reporter shouted. I paused, considering. I hope he gets the help he needs. And I hope he never does this to anyone else. What about your sister? Have you reconciled? No. And we won't be. Some betrayals can't be repaired. But I wish her well. I pushed through the crowd to Catherine's car. She drove me home in silence, understanding that I needed space. It's over, she said when we pulled up to my building. Really over. How do you feel? Tired, I admitted. But lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy and I finally get to put it down. You should be proud of yourself. You fought back. You didn't let them destroy you. I almost did let them destroy me, I said quietly. For a while there I thought about giving up. Just disappearing. Changing my name and starting over somewhere else where no one knew the story. Why didn't you? Because that would have been letting them win. They tried to erase me, to make me the villain, to silence me. Fighting back wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to be erased. Catherine nodded. You're stronger than you think, Alara. I had to be. I didn't have a choice. 4 months after the trial, Emma called me. Lena had the baby, she said without preamble. A girl. 7 pounds, healthy. I was at work on my lunch break in the hospital cafeteria. The noise of the crowded room faded into white noise. A girl, I repeated. Yeah. Mom sent me a picture. Do you want to see it? Did I? I wasn't sure. That baby was the product of the worst betrayal of my life. But she was also an innocent child who hadn't asked for any of this. Send it, I said. The photo came through a moment later. A tiny red-faced baby with a shock of dark hair. She looked like all newborns, wrinkly and vaguely alien and completely perfect. Something in my chest tightened. What did she name her? I asked. Sophia. Sophia. A beautiful name. But how's Lena doing? Struggling. Postpartum depression on top of everything else. Mom is helping with the baby, but she's overwhelmed too. And Julian, well, he's still in prison. He's signed away his parental rights. Wants nothing to do with the baby. Of course he did. Julian took no responsibility for anything. Elara, Emma said carefully. You don't have to care about this. You don't owe Lena or that baby anything. I know. But I kept looking at the photo. This little girl who would grow up without a father, with a struggling mother, in the ruins of a scandal she'd played no part in. I thought about my own childhood, always feeling like the second choice. The unwanted one. Would Sophia feel that way too? Thanks for telling me, I said to Emma. I need to get back to work. That night I couldn't stop thinking about the baby. About Sophia. I wasn't ready to reach out. I wasn't ready to forgive. But maybe there could be a future where I could have some kind of relationship with my niece. Not now. Not soon. But someday. It was a small hope. But it was there. A year after the trial I was a different person. I'd sold the apartment. Too many memories haunted those rooms. I bought a small house on the other side of the city with a garden and a porch swing. I adopted a rescue dog, a mutt named Charlie who had been abandoned by his previous owners. We understood each other, Charlie and I. I'd started therapy. Real, intensive therapy to work through the trauma and betrayal. Dr. Patricia Williams was patient and insightful, helping me untangle the knots of my childhood and my marriage. You've been seeking validation from people who were never going to give it to you, she told me in one session. Your parents, Julian, even Lena. You kept trying to earn their love, their approval. But you can't earn something that should be given freely. So what do? You give it to yourself. You validate yourself. You become the person who sees your worth. It was hard work. Painful work. But slowly I started to heal. I threw myself into my career. I took on a leadership role at the hospital, heading up a new pediatric mental health initiative. The work was challenging and meaningful. I was helping kids who, like me, had been failed by the adults who were supposed to protect them. I made new friends. Real friends who knew my story but saw me as more than just the woman who'd been betrayed. We had book clubs and wine nights and hiking trips. They reminded me that I was capable of connection, of trust. I even started dating cautiously. Nothing serious. I wasn't ready for serious. But I went on coffee dates and learned to enjoy someone's company without analyzing every word for hidden meanings. I was building a life. My life. Not the one I'd imagined with Julian, not the one I'd thought I'd have as part of my family. A different life. One that was entirely my own. 18 months after everything imploded, I ran into Lena at the grocery store. I was in the produce section debating between organic and regular strawberries, when I heard a baby crying. I looked up and there she was. Lena looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt. She was pushing a cart with a crying toddler strapped in. Sophia, I realized. She had to be about 14 months old now. Lena was bouncing the cart, trying to soothe the baby, digging through her purse for something. She looked overwhelmed and on the edge of tears herself. I could have walked away. Should have walked away. We had no relationship. I'd made that clear. But something made me step forward. Lena, I said quietly. She looked up and the blood drained from her face. Elara. She looked around as if considering fleeing. I'm sorry. I'll go to a different section. It's fine, I said. It's a public store. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Sophia continued to cry, her little face red with frustration. Is she okay? I asked, gesturing to the baby. She's teething. And tired. And I forgot her pacifier and I'm a terrible mother. Lena's voice cracked on the last word. Without thinking, I reached into my purse. I carried emergency supplies for the kids at the hospital. Here, I said, pulling out a sealed teething ring. It's clean. I keep them for work. Lena stared at it like I'd offered her a live grenade. I can't. It's for her, not you, I said firmly. She took it slowly, opened it and gave it to Sophia. The baby immediately quieted, gumming the teething ring with relief. Thank you, Lena whispered. I nodded and started to walk away. Elara, wait. Lena's voice stopped me. Can we talk? Just for a minute. Every instinct screamed at me to say no. To maintain the boundary I'd set. But I looked at her, really looked at her and saw something I'd never seen before. Humility. Real, bone-deep humility. 1 minute, I said. We moved to the side of the aisle out of the flow of traffic. Sophia was calm now, playing with the teething ring. I don't expect anything from you, Lena started. I know I destroyed any right to your time or attention. But I need you to know that everything in that letter I wrote, I meant. I've had a lot of time to think about who I was and why I did what I did. And I'm ashamed. Okay, I said neutrally. I'm in therapy. A lot of therapy. For the postpartum depression but also for everything else. All the toxic patterns. The jealousy. The entitlement. She looked down at Sophia. I have to be better for her. She deserves a mother who isn't a complete disaster. How are Mom and Dad? I asked, surprising myself. Struggling. Dad had a health scare last month. Minor heart attack. The stress of everything. She trailed off. They ask about you sometimes. They miss you. They made their choice. I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive them or me. I wanted you to know that we're all living with the consequences. Every day. Sophia reached out a chubby hand toward me, babbling something incomprehensible. Up close I could see she had my eyes. The Ashford eyes. And something around her mouth that reminded me of Lena as a baby from old photos. She's beautiful, I said softly. She is. Lena's voice was filled with a tenderness I'd never heard from her before. She's the only good thing that came from all of this. And I'm terrified I'm going to screw her up. You probably will, I said bluntly. All parents do. But if you're aware of it, if you're trying to be better, that's more than most people do. Lena's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I'll spend the rest of my life being sorry for what I did to you. I know, I said. And I did. I could see it in every line of her face, hear it in every word. This wasn't manipulation. It was genuine remorse. I'm not ready for a relationship with you, I continued. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. But I'm not wishing you harm. I hope you get your life together. For her sake, if not your own. That's more than I deserve. Yes. It is. I started to walk away again. This time I made it 3 steps before I turned back. Lena, if you ever need help. With the baby. Emergency help. You can call me. I'm not promising anything beyond that. But if she needs something and you have no one else, you can call. Lena's face crumpled. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. I nodded and walked away, my heart pounding. I wasn't sure if I'd done the right thing. But it felt right. It felt like the choice of someone who was healing, not someone still trapped in anger. 2 years after the wedding that destroyed my life, I was finally, truly okay. I'd gotten a promotion at work. I'd published a research paper on childhood trauma. I'd run a half marathon. I'd traveled to Italy by myself and loved every minute of it. I'd also, cautiously, started a serious relationship. His name was Ben and he was a teacher at a school near the hospital. We'd met when one of his students was admitted to my unit. He was kind, patient, and when I'd finally told him my story, he'd simply held my hand and said, "That must have been so painful. I'm glad you survived it." Not, "I'm sorry," or "they're terrible people," or any of the usual platitudes. Just acknowledgement of my pain and my strength. I was learning what healthy love looked like. What it felt like to be with someone who was honest, who showed up, who chose me every single day. Lena and I had a strange, distant relationship. We didn't see each other often, but we texted occasionally. She'd send me photos of Sophia hitting milestones. I'd respond with brief congratulations. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't hostility either. It was careful, boundaried peace. My parents and I had no relationship. They'd reached out a few times, but I'd maintained my boundary. Maybe one day I'd be ready to talk to them. But that day hadn't come yet, and I wasn't going to force it. Julian was released from prison after serving 18 months. I heard through Emma that he'd moved to another state, started over with a new name, a new life. Part of his restitution included a permanent restraining order. He wasn't allowed to contact me ever again. I didn't think about him much anymore. When I did, it was with a sort of detached curiosity. Who was that man I'd loved? Had he ever been real? Or had I loved a mirage? I'd never know. And I'd made peace with that. One evening, as I sat on my porch with Charlie at my feet and a glass of wine in my hand, my phone rang. Emma. Hey, I answered. What's up? Are you sitting down? I am. Why? Julian got arrested again. In his new state. For fraud. He apparently ran the same scam on another woman. I should have felt something. Vindication maybe. Satisfaction that he was facing consequences again. But I just felt tired. Is she okay? I asked. The woman. I don't know. But I thought you'd want to know. That you were right about him. That it was never about you being not enough. He's just broken. I already knew that, I said softly. But thank you for telling me. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering twilight, watching the sunset paint my garden in shades of gold and pink. Julian's arrest didn't change anything for me. He'd already lost his power over my life. He was just a man now. A sad, pathetic man who would probably spend the rest of his life hurting people because he didn't know how to be whole. I'd been shattered too. But I'd put myself back together. Different than before, yes. With cracks and scars. But stronger. More real. More myself. The betrayal had been brutal. The revenge had been necessary. But the healing, that had been the real victory. I'd survived. More than that, I'd thrived. And sitting there on my porch with my dog and my wine and my hard-won peace, I realized something profound. I'd won. Not because they'd faced consequences though they had. Not because I'd exposed the truth though I had. I'd won because I'd refused to let their betrayal define me. I'd refused to become bitter and broken. I'd done the hardest work of all. I'd healed. I'd built a life I loved, filled with people who valued me. I'd rediscovered my worth, not in what others thought of me, but in who I knew myself to be. The woman who'd hidden in that church loft 2 years ago, watching her world burn, was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who knew her value. Someone who wouldn't settle for crumbs of affection ever again. That night I slept deeply and dreamlessly. No nightmares of lilies and white lace. No jolting awake in panic. Just peace. I married Ben in a small ceremony in my garden. Just close friends, a few colleagues, Emma and her family. No big production. No society wedding. Just love and honesty and joy. Emma was my maid of honor. During her toast she said something that made me cry. Alara is the strongest person I know. She was betrayed by the people who should have protected her. But instead of letting that betrayal destroy her, she used it to become someone even more incredible. She reminds us all that we get to choose who we become, even after the worst things happen to us. Ben and I honeymooned in Greece. We swam in impossibly blue water and ate too much food and made love under the stars. He told me every day that he loved me. And I believed him. Not because I was naive, but because his actions matched his words. Every single day. When we got back, there was a package waiting on my doorstep. Inside was a children's book and a note in Lena's handwriting. Sophia asked me who you were when she saw your picture. I told her you were my sister and that you were very brave. She wanted to send you this. It's her favorite book. He thought you might like it too. I'm in a better place now. Therapy helped. I have a job again, nothing glamorous but honest work. I'm raising my daughter to be kind, to think of others, to understand that actions have consequences. I'll never stop being sorry for what I did to you. But I'm grateful that you showed me it's possible to survive our own mistakes and become better. You don't have to respond to this. But I wanted you to know that you saved me in a way. By refusing to let me off the hook, by holding me accountable, you forced me to actually change. I'm a better mother because of it. Thank you, Lena. I held the book, a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit, and felt tears prick my eyes. Not tears of pain this time. Tears of something more complex. Resolution maybe. Or acceptance. I put the book on my shelf next to the photo of Ben and me on our wedding day. Some stories don't have neat endings. Some wounds heal but leave scars. Some relationships can't be repaired, but the anger can still fade. My family had broken me. But I'd put myself back together. And the life I'd built from those broken pieces was more beautiful than anything I'd had before. That was my revenge in the end. Not their suffering, though they'd certainly suffered. Not their consequences, though those had been real. My revenge was my joy. My peace. My thriving. I'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and used it to become the best version of myself. And as I stood in my kitchen in my home with my husband humming in the next room and my whole life stretching ahead of me, I realized something. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. They tried to destroy me. Instead, they just cleared the way for me to build something better. I won. And I would keep winning, every single day for the rest of my life.